Boyd-Barrett, please.
Minister, while the people of this country are showing extraordinary solidarity and generosity in terms of the terrible suffering of the Ukrainian people, they are simultaneously being absolutely crucified with the spiralling costs of living, of electricity and gas prices, energy prices, and so on. And the latest bad news in that regard is the ESRI report saying that inflation is going to hit 8.7% in the summer. So people's incomes, people's savings, their ability to pay their bills is being absolutely wiped out. In the face of this, the government, and I want to stress other European governments and the American government, all of whom will be meeting in Europe this week, are saying we're more or less powerless. There's nothing really we can do, even more so now because of the Ukraine war. Now I want to ask you, Minister, are you familiar with the concept of war profiteering? Because I suggest you and the government and the EU leaders make yourself familiar with this concept. War profiteering is a disgusting practice where ordinary people are asked to endure incredible hardship, financial and others, as a result of war, but where companies, private companies and businesses make super profits at the expense of everybody else's misery, exploiting the crisis and the war. And I want to suggest to you that that's what we are seeing. We are seeing across the world war profiteering on an absolutely industrial scale by the producers of fuel and energy and the suppliers of fuel and energy globally, in Europe and in this country, and the bill for that is being picked up with the extreme hardship, the energy, poverty and so on that people are suffering. Just look at the facts of these companies' profits. French company Total Energy, profits up 300% to 16.1 billion euro. BP, profits up to 13 billion, highest profits in 8 years. Shell profits up to 19 billion, highest in 8 years. Chevron profits up to 15 billion. ExxonMobil up to 23 billion. Aramco, the Saudi company, profits up 124% to 110 billion. And of course, that's mirrored here in this country. ESB profits up 617 to 679 million, up 10%. Energia profits up 46% to 35 million. Now, what are you going to do about that? Because while everybody else is being told to suffer, to endure hardship, these energy companies and petrol companies are absolutely making a fortune. If the European leaders who are meeting this week in Europe can take unprecedented action to impose sanctions on Putin's bloody regime, could they not take unprecedented action to stop the war profiteering that we are seeing from energy and electricity companies and the producers of petrol and gas across Europe to control the prices so that ordinary people aren't suffering the way they are?
Thank you. Minister, please.
Thank you very much, Deputy Boyd-Barrett. And it may well be the case that there are companies that are profiteering on the back of the current international climate around energy prices. Those issues are not entirely within the control of any government or indeed of the European Union acting as a collective. But the European Union leaders, when they meet at European Council tomorrow and Friday, will be examining this issue in the round. The issue of energy prices that are having such an impact on our people, our households, our businesses, and indeed our economies. I mean, we are seeing, as you know, a significant increase in the wholesale prices in the markets. That is a reality that suppliers, distributors and retailers are having to face. Just a week before last, I was part of a delegation of ministers that met with a number of the key stakeholders operating in this sector here in Ireland. Fuels for Ireland, which is a representative body, and the petrol retailers Business Association, and we had a lengthy and good discussion with them about the challenges, about how the markets are working and how the prices are feeding their way through from the wholesale level right through to the level that the consumer is paying on the ground. You mentioned the issue of the ESB. The government, as you know, is a significant beneficiary of any profits that the ESB earns. We have received in the last 10 years as a government €1.2 billion in dividends from the ESB. They are on a green transition themselves, which involves major capital investment over the next number of years of the order of €2 billion a year to be invested to assist us as a country on that journey. Because the ultimate insurance policy that we have against this issue is to reduce our dependence on fossil fuels, is to reduce our dependence on being an importer of energy. And that is why the government is excited by the potential of floating offshore wind, for example. And we will see over the next number of years major initiatives in that regard. We have already passed the enabling legislation. As you know, the maritime area planning legislation, a new regulatory and licensing regime is now being put in place by Minister Ryan and Minister Darragh O'Brien, and we look forward to seeing the progress of that over the period ahead. So what we are experiencing here as a result, first of all, of COVID, and now as a result of the appalling invasion of Ukraine, is an international market where the normal balance between supply and demand has been completely disrupted. And this has resulted in a significant increase in prices that all of our consumers in this country and indeed right throughout the world are facing. You heard me earlier on put on the record the rate of inflation in the UK today, 6.2%, the United States almost 8%. So the suggestion that we as a small open trading economy can deal with this issue entirely on our own is just not realistic.
Deputy.
The point I'm making is that both this government and collectively European and American governments do have the power. And in fact, it was a power that was used during the Second World War, where profiteering was stopped and where the state took control of things like energy and other vital supplies in order to control prices. And under the current regime, even if we do develop more renewable energy, it won't reduce the prices. I mean, here's a fact. Europe now produces most of its electricity from renewable resources in Europe. Most of our gas comes from Corrib in Ireland. Most of our electricity is produced here, over 50%. Over 50%. But because we have given it over to the control of private companies, they charge what they like. And they are profiteering, and governments in this country and in Europe choose to do nothing about it. You can impose sanctions, but you can't apparently control the profiteering of energy companies in this country and Europe. I suggest you can, but you refuse to do so because it seems profits come before people for this government and for the governments of Europe.
Thank you very much. Minister McGrath.
Deputy, I do believe that investing in renewables is the way forward. We have a target that by 2030, about 80% of our electricity generation in Ireland will come from renewables. At the moment, it's 40+%. It varies day by day, depending on the extent to which the wind blows. But that is the future for Ireland. And you mentioned about gas. We do not get all of our gas from the Corrib. I think no, it's not most. We get about 30%. Yeah. About 30%, Deputy. It's important we're accurate. The balance of it we get from the UK and from Norway. Yeah. So we are not self-sufficient in relation to gas supply in this country. And similarly, of course, in respect of oil. And you narrowed this issue down to fuel, which is a major issue. You ignore the fact that the impact of the war is also having on food prices, on fertiliser, on input costs for farmers and so on. So it might suit your ideological agenda to narrow it down to one specific issue. The impact of this is global, and it is across a range of sectors that are impacting on the Irish economy, and we are doing all that we can as a government to respond.
On behalf of the Independent